Afghanistan and Pakistan are two nations bound together by more than just a line on a map. They share a long, often rugged border that stretches for over 2,600 kilometers. Their connections run much deeper, woven through centuries. Shared history, shared culture, shared faith flowed across this frontier. Goods have flowed across this frontier. Ideas have flowed across this frontier. This created a complex tapestry of interdependence. When one country experiences turmoil, the other feels the tremors. Today, on October 12, 2025, the relationship is under immense strain. Tensions are heating up with global implications. It's not just governments and soldiers, it's millions of ordinary people. Look beyond daily headlines of border skirmishes and political statements. The current friction is the culmination of years and decades of events. Withdrawal of international forces. The dramatic return of the Taliban to power. This piece will break down the situation into understandable parts. We'll walk a simple timeline of recent events, introduce the key players, and explain the core issues with a calm, respectful perspective. To make sense of the current friction, we need to rewind the clock a bit. Let's start around 2014. NATO combat troops began to formally end their mission, handing over primary security responsibilities to the Afghan National Security Forces. This transition was meant to empower Afghanistan to stand on its own feet, but the reality was far more challenging. Afghan forces, despite years of training and funding, struggled to contain a persistent insurgency. Meanwhile, Pakistan, watching from next door, publicly stated its desire for a peaceful and stable Afghanistan, knowing that chaos on its western flank would inevitably spill over. Fragile hope for Afghan sovereignty was shadowed by the constant threat of violence from armed groups. Fast forward to 2018. 2019. Violence across Afghanistan surged, and the Taliban gained control over significant rural territory. The United States began direct negotiations with the Taliban, shifting the political landscape. Pakistan facilitated talks, using its complicated ties to bring them to the table. But diplomats negotiated while the fighting continued on the ground. Militant groups exploited porous border regions, using mountainous terrain to move fighters, weapons, resources back and forth, making the security situation even more precarious for civilians living in those areas. The year 2020 marked a watershed moment with the signing of the U.S. Taliban deal in Doha. The deal set a roadmap for the withdrawal of American forces and for NATO forces. It included Taliban promises to prevent groups like Al-Qaeda from using Afghan soil. It also called for intra-Afghan negotiations between the Taliban and the Afghan government. Some hailed it as a breakthrough, others saw it as deeply controversial. The Afghan government was largely excluded from the initial talks, and violence against Afghan security forces and civilians continued. The balance of power had shifted, setting up the events that followed. Then came the summer of 2021. Final U.S. troops departed. NATO troops left as well, and the Afghan government and military collapsed with breathtaking speed. In weeks, the Taliban swept across the country, captured provincial capitals one by one, and entered Kabul in August. Chaotic scenes at Kabul airport, with thousands trying to flee, became the defining image. The sudden takeover created a power vacuum and a new reality for Pakistan and the region. Pakistan's cautiously engaged partner was now in full control next door, bringing new challenges and uncertainties. The consequences would soon test the entire frontier. With the collapse of the previous government in 2021, the Taliban transitioned from an insurgent group to the de facto ruling authority of Afghanistan. This was a monumental shift. Their immediate task was to govern a country teetering on the brink of economic and humanitarian collapse, a challenge vastly different from waging a war. They now control the ministries, the police forces, the courts, imposing their vision of order and Islamic law across a diverse and weary nation. For many Afghans, their rule brought an end to daily combat between government forces and insurgents, reducing civilian casualties from active fighting. However, this newfound security has come at a steep price for many, especially women, ethnic minorities, and former government employees. For Pakistan, the situation in Afghanistan is not a distant foreign policy issue. It is a matter of urgent national security. The Pakistani government and its powerful military have long worried about spillover on their western border. Their primary concern is the resurgence of the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, an organization distinct from the Afghan Taliban but with similar ideology. Pakistan alleges the TTP uses safe havens inside Afghanistan to plan and launch deadly attacks. This has led to increased security operations and heightened tensions with Kabul. Pakistan has hosted millions of Afghan refugees for over 4 decades. New waves after 2021 strain limited resources. A balance between humanitarian kinship and economic and security pressures is increasingly difficult. Periodic crackdowns and deportations draw criticism from human rights organizations. Pakistan has spent years fencing the border to curb illegal crossings by militants and smugglers. Afghanistan has never formally recognized the Durand Line, making the fence itself a flashpoint. Reinforced checkpoints and closures disrupt trade and daily life. Pashtun communities with historic cross-border movement are hit hardest. Security measures may deter threats, but they also reshape lives. A sudden closure can mean lost livelihoods and lost time that communities cannot afford. The border region is home to a complex ecosystem of militant groups, each with its own agenda, ideology, and patrons. Understanding these groups is crucial to grasping the security crisis. The most prominent from Pakistan's perspective is the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, the Pakistani Taliban, separate from the Afghan Taliban. The TTP's declared goal is to overthrow the Pakistani state and impose strict rule. Pakistan accuses the Afghan Taliban of providing shelter, a charge the Taliban denies. Another player is ISIS-K, an IS affiliate and sworn enemy of both the Afghan Taliban and the Pakistani state. ISIS-K has claimed horrific attacks against minorities, civilians, Taliban, and Pakistani forces. The Afghan Taliban are actively fighting ISIS-K. This creates a confusing three-way conflict and complicates alliances. Beyond the majors, smaller militant and sectarian groups persist. Some remnants of the anti-Soviet jihad, others driven by local grievances. They form alliances of convenience, sharing resources, intelligence, and safe houses. Activities range from smuggling and kidnapping for ransom to targeted assassinations and large-scale bombings. For civilians, the fear is constant. It is often unclear who is in control. The cross-border nature makes these groups resilient. Pressure in one country pushes them into the other. As long as they have places to hide, regroup, and plan, they will threaten both nations and the people caught in between. At the heart of the conflict lies the Durand Line, drawn in 1893 to mark spheres between British India and Afghanistan. Imposed without full Afghan consent, it sliced through the Pashtun homeland. Pashtuns are Afghanistan's largest ethnic group and a major group in Pakistan. No Afghan government, monarchy, republic, or the current Taliban has formally recognized the Durand Line. Many call it an artificial boundary that divides families, tribes, and a shared identity. The grievance has profound modern consequences. For Pakistan, the Durand Line is internationally recognized. Securing it is sovereignty. Watchtowers, patrols, high-tech surveillance. Islamabad says fencing stops militants, smugglers, and undocumented migrants. But fence building sparks protests and clashes. Afghan guards see it as an attempt to formalize a rejected border. Pashtun tribes historically moved freely to visit relatives, graze livestock, and trade. New barriers disrupt livelihoods and separate families. Local economies are crippled. The unresolved dispute poisons diplomacy and undermines cooperation on security and trade. The Taliban need a working relationship with Pakistan, but recognition would look like betrayal to many Afghans. While governments clash over borders and security, civilians bear the heaviest burden. For millions, fear and loss define daily life. Economic collapse pushed Afghanistan into a humanitarian crisis. Food exists, but many cannot afford it. Children suffer severe malnutrition. Healthcare has crumbled. Along the frontier, ordinary trips risk crossfire, bombs, or strikes. When crossings like Torkham or Chaman close, lifelines snap, goods spoil, and families are cut off. Many refugees face discrimination, harassment, and deportation, returning with little more than the clothes on their backs. Yet communities, elders, religious figures, and aid workers keep hope alive with food, medicine, and shelter. Their survival and hopes for a better future are what's truly at stake. The escalating tension is not just regional, it has global security implications. After years of investment to prevent safe havens, instability raises critical questions about resurgence. ISIS-K and unresolved TDP sanctuaries keep the transnational threat alive. Neighbors like China, Iran, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan watch anxiously. The aid dilemma looms. Help Afghans without legitimizing policies that many condemn. Instability in nuclear-armed Pakistan worries Washington, Beijing, and Brussels alike. As we stand today, the relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan is balanced on a knife's edge. A rapid unraveling of the old order has yielded a volatile reality. The Taliban control Afghanistan but preside over a shattered economy, face pockets of resistance, and external pressure to curb militants. Pakistan confronts TTP violence, a refugee crunch, and economic strain. Civilians live by the rhythm of closures, alerts, and the search for food and safety. Primary risks: escalating cross-border conflict, a worsening humanitarian crisis, expansion of terror networks like ISIS-K, political fragility with unpredictable consequences, watch border crossings, closures versus consistent opening, track high-level diplomacy in Kabul, Islamabad, and regional capitals, monitor attack frequency, locations, and which groups claim them, and watch humanitarian aid flow, a critical barometer for survival. The path forward is fraught with challenges. Progress depends on hard choices, international engagement, and people's resilience.